أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فسبحان الله حين تمسون وحين تصبحون، وله الحمد في السماوات والأرض وعشيا وحين تظهرون. يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ويحيي الأرض بعد موتها وكذلك تخرجون. ومن آياته أن خلقكم من تراب ثم إذا أنتم بشر تنتشرون. ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة، إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم، إن في ذلك لآيات للعالمين. ومن آياته منامكم بالليل والنهار وابتغاؤكم من فضله، إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يسمعون. ومن آياته يريكم البرق خوفا وطمعا وينزل من السماء ماء فيحيي به الأرض بعد موتها، إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يعقلون. ومن آياته أن تقوم السماء والأرض بأمره، ثم إذا دعاكم دعوة من الأرض إذا أنتم تخرجون. وله من في السماوات والأرض كل له قانتون، وهو الذي يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده وهو أهون عليه، وله المثل الأعلى في السماوات والأرض، وهو العزيز الحكيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ولي الصالحين، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الداعي إلى صراط مستقيم، صلى الله وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن سار على نهجه واقتفى آثاره ليوم الدين. أما بعد. After praising Allah Jalla fi Ulah and sending salutations upon our Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam will proceed. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah that Allah Azza wa Jalla has gathered us here this evening. And I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to make this a blessed gathering. I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to make us from those who are forgiven in this gathering. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make us from those who hear this speech and follow the best of it. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla, just like He gathered us all here this evening, that He gathers us all in Jannah Firdaus A'la. Ameen. Dua is free, wallahi. And I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to aid our brothers and sisters who are suffering all over the world. I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to aid our brothers and sisters in Palestine. I ask Allah to grant them victory and to deal with those who are oppressing them. إنه لذلك القادر عليه. أيها الإخوة والأخوات, I'm extremely glad to be here this evening with you in the city of Malmo. It's my first visit to the city, and hopefully it won't be the last. And I've heard many good things about this city, especially the Muslim community here. And I wasn't actually meant to come here. It was very last minute. I came to Sweden last week, and I was in Stockholm, I was in Gothenburg, I was in a number of cities. And then I went to Norway. And there was no time for Malmo in the schedule. So what we had to do is that I had to go to Norway, then come back to Sweden in order to come to Malmo, because I said I can't let my brothers and sisters in Malmo down. And it seems like the other thing that pushed me to come back, it seems like the community here is very excited about getting married. Therefore I thought, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to go to Malmo for the first time, and hopefully by the end of the lecture I manage to get people married. So are you guys ready for that, inshallah, by the end of the lecture? Who's ready to get married now? Raise your hand. Huh? Only 2 hands. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. The sisters, I'm sure they are shy, but there's many sisters who are ready to get married. We're going to matchmake today, inshallah ta'ala. We have witnesses. We have, inshallah, we'll call the guardians, the wedding, we'll ask for permission, and we'll do the aqd right now, inshallah. أيها الإخوة والأخوات, marriage, this is a great act of worship that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has legislated for us. This act of worship, marriage, it's something that's extremely beloved to Allah. Allah loves it. Because there's so many benefits that come out of marriage. And that's why it's important before one gets married, they understand the objectives and the goals of marriage. Why are you getting married? It's important to understand that first. Some people, they get married because everyone else is getting married. Some people get married because social pressure pressures them to get married. Some people get married because it just seems cool. Or they saw it on a movie and they thought, you know what, I want to live that. But when you understand the actual goals of marriage and what you're trying to achieve when you get married, it makes your marriage more meaningful. There are a number of objectives of marriage. Now, before I tell you what they are, I want to see how many you know. What are the goal objectives of marriage? Who can tell me? Why do you get married? Why do you want to get married? Huh? 2? To complete half your deen. Jameel, anything else? That's the one that everyone's memorized. Something else? Yes, at the back. To have children, excellent. What else? To protect yourself from the haram, excellent. What else? Anything from the sisters? Nothing. Khair. Hayye. Naam, the Prophet ﷺ said, marry the woman who is affectionate and has a lot of children, so because I'm going to show off with my number, the number of the ummah on the day of judgment. Excellent, to have children, a lot of children. Jameel, anything else? Or is that it? You mentioned some of the objectives of marriage. The first objective of marriage is a religious one, it's a spiritual one. It is so that your deen becomes stronger, that you become stronger in your faith. You are one who has support on your journey to Allah Azza wa Jal. You have someone who is sharing that journey with you, who complements you on that journey. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he told us that when you get married, you're completing half of your religion, that other half. But in order for someone to complete that half of the other half of the religion, they must first work on completing the first half. That's what you need to do before you get married. That before you get married, you're working on yourself. You're trying to get closer to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. You're establishing a strong relationship with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. You are one who is devout to Allah Jalla fi'ula. That is what's required from one who is getting married, so that when you get married, you have someone else who is going to bring that other half of that devoutness to Allah Azza wa Jal, to help you on your journey to Allah Jalla fi'ula. What does it mean to be one who completes that first half? It means, in simple terms, I'll make it as simple as possible. It means that you are one who fulfills your obligations to Allah. That which Allah obliged upon you, you do it. But if you are one who neglects that which Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has obliged upon you, then you haven't worked on that first half of your religion that you are required to try to perfect. If you are one who is not praying your 5 daily prayers, something is wrong with the religiosity that you need to fix. If you're one who's not dutiful to their parents, and perhaps is harmful to their parents, you need to be one who's dutiful to them, because you need to work on your relationship with your parents. If you're one who does not fulfill the other obligations, you don't fast Ramadan, you don't give the charity that's obligatory, you are not one who goes out your way to do the things that Allah Azza wa Jal has made a requirement for you to be a Muslim, then that's what you need to work on. You need to fix that. You guys, I heard in Sweden they like the word fix. The funny story behind it is that before I came to Sweden, there were brothers who were arranging. The English word is arrangement, arranging, right? They were arranging their schedule. So what happened was they kept telling me, if you want to have this in Stockholm, or you want to do this in Gothenburg, we can fix it. That's what they kept saying to me. So I didn't understand, what do they mean we can fix it? What's broken? So I said to them, everything's fine, there's nothing that needs to be fixed. They said to him, no, if you really want to do this lecture here, we can fix that as well. I said, fix, do they mean arrange? Turns out you guys say fix in your language, huh? And you translate it directly. You guys need to fix that. So what you need to do is you need to fix the first half of your deen. Once you fix it, it will make you someone who's prepared to go into that marriage. Why? Because look at this. The Prophet ﷺ, when he spoke about the criteria that you should look out for when it comes to getting married, when you're looking for a spouse, a husband, or a man is looking for a wife, the criteria that he pointed out each time is that look at that religiosity. For both, the deen. That deen is that they fulfill their obligations to Allah. If they do more, that's even better. Right? But they are people who fulfill their obligations to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. They are a match. That's what the Prophet ﷺ is saying. Rather, he says to us ﷺ, that is the most important criteria. Everything else does not matter. If that is not intact, if they have all the other criteria, it's not a match for you. He said ﷺ about the man, إِذَا أَتَاكُم مَّن تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلُقَهُ فَزَوِّجُوهُ. If a man proposes to your daughter and you're pleased with his character and his religiosity, then marry him off to your daughter. If this character and religiosity, his deen, are intact. But notice something here. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned the religion, the deen, but then on top of that he mentioned the character. Character is part of deen, but he mentioned it by itself to show that it has importance. Because a man's character is one of the most important things in a marriage. Some people, they are religious in terms of doing the obligations that Allah has obliged upon them in terms of their ibadah, but they are zero when it comes to character. He may beat you to the first row in every salah, he might be in the masjid at all times, but his tongue is loose, he utters whatever he wants. He behaves with the people however he wants. He is harsh, he oppresses the people, he backbites the people, he is one who is extremely aggressive, and so on. These are things that one needs to work on. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah tabarak wa ta'ala, this is to the men. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah azza wa jalla, he says, this is a general statement, but even more important for a man. He says, if an individual surpasses you and is higher than you in good character, he has surpassed you in deen. He has more deen than you. If someone has more good character than you, he has more deen than you. That's a general statement for everyone. But it's even more important for the man. You know why I say it's even more important for the man? Because the man, he's the one, most of the time, who either makes a marriage or breaks it. It's within the man's sphere. Because there are going to be times in a marriage where things are going to be extremely difficult. There are going to be times in a marriage where things are going to get tough. There are going to be times in a marriage where there are going to be extreme disagreements with your spouse. When these matters occur, the man does not have the right to be emotional at times like this. He doesn't have that right. Because if you were to be emotional, that's what can lead the marriage to breaking down. For instance, your wife is upset. She is shouting, she is screaming, she perhaps is even breaking the cups and the plates and everything. Right? How do you react? You're meant to be calm in a situation like that. You're not allowed to be angry. You're not allowed to shout back. You wait for the situation to calm down and then you deal with it. That's part of having good character and being one who's wise. The Prophet ﷺ was like that. Our Messenger ﷺ, because he's the best example for all of us. He ﷺ, did he have difficult times in his marriages? Yes, he did. How did he deal with it? He dealt with it in the following manner. Imagine, look at this. One day, the Prophet ﷺ, he's in the house of Aisha radiallahu anha. And then, he was going to have some guests that are coming to his home. So, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to compete. They were jealous of each other, so they used to compete. So one of the other wives of the Prophet ﷺ, she sent her servant with a dish of food to take to the house of Aisha to be given to the guests. The food is brought to the house. Now, Aisha radiallahu anha, when she sees it, she gets offended. And she has every right to get offended. Because this other wife is making it seem like that Aisha cannot cater for the guests. That she cannot host them. So what does Aisha radiallahu anha do? She grabs the dish and she smashes it in front of the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine, Imam al-Rasul, in front of the Prophet ﷺ, she smashes it. Some of the narration, it says that the guests were there with the Prophet ﷺ and she smashed the plates in front of the guests and the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine now, I want you to imagine the house of the Prophet ﷺ. It's very small, it's a hujrah, very small. The guests and where Aisha are and where the Prophet ﷺ, it's all within the same area. It's very tiny. She's not in a separate room when she's doing this. They're in the same area, she smashed it. How would you react if that happened to you? Perhaps some of us, if that happened to them, their wife smashed the plates in front of them, they'll tell all the guests, Yallah, everyone out. I will deal this right now, right? And perhaps the situation will escalate. And they will let their emotions drive them. But look at the best of creation, Muhammad alayhi salatu salam. His first reaction was that he smiled. He smiled. The Sahaba are shocked. Some of them are thinking, what just happened? What on earth is going on? What have we walked into? And the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, he knows they're confused, so he says to them, غارت أمكم, your mother became jealous. And then he helps clean up the plates as if nothing happened. That takes a lot of self-restraint. That is true strength. A man who can do that is a strong man. Because the Prophet ﷺ told us, لَيْسَ الشَّدِيدُ بِالسُّرْعَةِ, that the strong man is not the one who's able to wrestle people and beat them physically. That's not a strong man. He said, إِنَّمَا الشَّدِيدُ مَنْ يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. The true strong one is the one who's able to control himself when he's angry. If you lose control of yourself when you're angry, you're a weak man. You let shaitan get the best of you. You're not able to combat him. You don't have the strength to do so. But a man who's able to have that self-restraint and he refrains from being extremely emotional and even losing his mind because of how emotional he becomes, that's a strong man. Now the question that every single one of us, especially the men, the brothers who are here, needs to ask himself is that, how much of that do I possess? If I don't possess that, I need to now work on that, especially if you're not married before I get into a marriage. That you learn to be forbearing, you learn to be patient. The Prophet ﷺ, he told us, إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمُ وَإِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمِ. He said that knowledge, it's learnt. And just like that, forbearance, learning to be patient is something that you can learn, you teach yourself to have. Some of the previous righteous people, amongst them are those who were extremely forbearing, to the extent that if the worst thing was done to them, they would not lose themselves. There was a man known as Al-Ahnaf ibn Qais. Al-Ahnaf ibn Qais was a tabi'i, the generation after the Sahaba. He was known for his extreme hilm, forbearance. It is said that some of the people, they heard the reputation that Ahnaf had, that he was extremely forbearing. So they wanted to test his forbearance. So they sent a man, a foolish man, and this foolish man, they gave him his money. They said to him, we want you to go to Ahnaf ibn Qais, who's the leader of his tribe, whilst he's sitting with his people, his men, who all respect him. We want you to go to him and sit with him and smack him in the face. They gave him money to do that, to see his reaction. Right? So, Al-Ahnaf, he was sitting there and all his men are around him, and these are men that respect him, right? Especially when there's others there and you get hit by someone, you feel obliged to retaliate because you're going to look weak if you don't retaliate, right? So they caught him in a difficult time. So look, the man comes to Ahnaf and he sits with Ahnaf and he says to him, are you the extremely forbearing man? Ahnaf, he knows that there's a certain man who's plotting against him, who's trying to harm him. So he says to him, I'm forbearing, but that man over there, he's even more forbearing than me. I think that's the one you're looking for. That's the man who sent him. So the man was sitting in the corner and he was praying. So what happened? This man, this foolish man, he said, this is the man I'm looking for. He went behind him, smacked him across the head. Ahnaf smiled and he said that was a smack that was for me, but because of my forbearance, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala diverted it from me. Right? Allah Azza wa Jal, when He sees good character in you, and when He sees that you're a person who has good character for Allah, Allah Azza wa Jal will make things easier for you. Because good character is an act of worship. It's ibadah. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he told us that أَكْثَرُ مَا يُدْخِلُ نَاسَ الْجَنَّةِ تَقْوَى اللَّهِ وَحُسْنُ الْخُلُقِ. The most two matters that admit the people into paradise, it is God consciousness, taqwa, and good character. It's an act of worship. The more you have it, the more Allah Azza wa Jalla will be pleased with you, and Allah Azza wa Jalla will aid you and assist you in your affairs. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ, he told us, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَبْلُغُ بِحُسْنِ خُلُقِهِ دَرَجَةَ الصَّائِمِ الْقَائِمِ. That an individual will attain with his good character the status and the rank of the one who fasts a lot of voluntary fasts and the one who prays a lot of voluntary prayers. You can get the same rank as that individual because of your good character. It shows the value of it in the sight of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. So that's something that we need to work on, we need to develop. That will make you more prepared for a marriage. That's the first thing. Secondly, ayyuha al-kiram, it is also essential that when you are, because the title of this lecture is how do you find the one, right? Is that correct? That's correct. So that's the most question that I get when it comes to marriage questions. How do I find someone? What do I do to find someone? And the answer that I give them is I don't know. End of lecture. Sah? Because there's not one answer to this. There's numerous answers that can be given. But I'm going to give you a breakdown. Hopefully, it will make it easier for us, inshaAllah ta'ala. How do I find the person that I'm looking forward to get married to? The first step that you need to take when it comes to getting married and finding someone who's suitable for you is that you look in the place that you're going to find everything. and that's with Allah. The first step that you take, which is the practical step that most people overlook, sometimes they don't do at all, is that you raise your hands to Allah Jalla fi ula, and you sincerely ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant you a righteous spouse, someone who's good for you. You raise your hands and sincerely ask Allah Azza wa Jalla. You know why? Because Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala promises to give you a response to whatever you ask for. That's a promise from Allah Azza wa Jalla. So it does not make sense for me to not to ask. Before I ask any human being or I look elsewhere, I ask Allah first. And whenever you ask Allah Jalla fi'ula sincerely, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will never disappoint you. The Prophet ﷺ tells in hadith, there are three categories of people that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala promises to help them, to aid them, to assist them. Amongst them is the one who is trying to get married to protect themselves from haram. Allah promises to help that person to get married. If you're sincere. If you're sincere in looking for marriage, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows your heart, how sincere you are, and how serious you are, you raise your hands to Allah Azza wa Jalla and you ask Allah for His aid and assistance to grant to that person. That's the first thing. And the way you ask Allah Azza wa Jalla matters. Some people, they say, I made dua, but I'm still single, brother. What are you on about? The way you ask Allah makes a difference. What do I mean by the way you ask Allah?